Fun fact, you guys, this right here, the base, did y'all know that it's called a peduncle? Hello plant community, thanks for tuning into this channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Pam, and today's topic for our Curiosity That Grew the Plant series would be Homalomemas. Yes, pick this plant because not too many people talk about it, and I wanted to shine the spotlight on plants that's not being talked as much in our social media platforms. So let's just jump right into it. So did you know, guys, that Homalomemas are part of the Araceae family? Now let's just stop briefly right there. For those of you who may not know, or you may ask yourself, what exactly is part of a Araceae family? Well, it's actually a family of tropical plants that are distinguished by having flowers or blooms that has a spadix or a spathe. Plants that has this particular thing would be our anthuriums and peace lilies. So I just wanted to take the time to show you guys exactly what I mean in regards to those portions or parts of the actual flower. And I have a peace lily here. This is my platinum mist peace lily, and it has bloomed for me, you guys, at least twice throughout the growing season under my care. And of course right here, you guys, this is the bloom that we're talking about, and the white portion of this bloom would what we would be considered the spathe or spath in regards to how you pronounce it, and the piece that's in the middle is actually so cool fact about the spadix. I do believe, not 100% sure, I would have to probably do some research on this portion, but I do believe that this part is a unisex, I guess, organ, if you want to say that, meaning that at some portions of the time it could be male and then it turn into female, and I believe you actually use whatever comes out of this, or if you time it just right, you could actually use it for seedlings and actually grow new plants from that. And I think that's pretty cool. But I also have a fun fact, you guys. This right here, the base, did y'all know that it's called a peduncle? Yes, it's actually called a peduncle. Now, of course, you guys, we would be more commonly, when we're talking about peduncles, would be traditionally on our Hoyas. But peduncles is actually the main stalk of inflorescent or flower. So there's peduncles on pretty much all of our plants. It's just that we're using different words for it, such as like with our philodendrons, we could be using petiole, stem, or stalk. I thought that was a cool fun fact I just wanted to share with you guys so you can understand exactly what it means in regards to an actual bloom or spathe and spadix. So I thought that was cool, fun fact there. Now also, you guys, these Homalomemas have a little bit over 200 species. Some of our most common ones would be the Homalomema selby, which I do have in my collection. And if you guys had a chance to watch my Danger Zone plant, I believe that particular variety was spotlighted, and we talked a little bit about that particular plant. Then we also have another common variety would be the purple sword. I don't have that variety, but it's very beautiful. It has, like, I believe the front of the leaves have like a, I say, greenish, grayish hues in the front, and the undersides is kind of a purplish leaf. Very beautiful and very stunning in my personal opinion. Now the third one is actually the emerald gem, which I do have here, and this is the plant that I'm spotlighting today. Let me see if I can pick it up. It's kind of heavy with this. I have it in this plant, well, cash pole really, and it's actually like a 6-inch, and I just put it in here. But I really love this plant, you guys, and I love it. If you look at it, the size of the leaves is very beautiful. I love the definedness of the leaves with the lines in it, and it is heart-shaped. Very beautiful, very, very full plant, and I really do love it as part of my collection. I probably would not recommend this plant as a beginner plant, not until you fully understand lighting and water and things of that nature, and that's what we're going to talk about a little bit later. Now, also too, if grown in the proper conditions, this plant can grow in between 3 to 4 feet tall, and it's not a fast grower. So if you do buy this plant, I recommend probably buying it in the size that you would prefer right now, so that you can admire it for the size that it is, because it does grow kind of slow. So yeah, so let's just get right into the care tips for this plant. Now let's start with the soil. You guys, this plant does prefer very airy soil. Now I've brought this plant, I haven't had it in my collection for a year yet. And if a plant, when I first buy a plant, you guys, just to give you some additional information, I pay attention to what's going on with my plants within the first couple of weeks, as we all should do when we introduce plants into our homes. Outside of just quarantine, we just want to see how they're doing under our conditions, how they're acclimating to our conditions. Now, if I happen to see that my plant is declining and the soil itself is not something that I'm used to working with, then I do tend to change it out. But if I have a plant and I see that it is thriving and is liking the soil conditions, when I do repot it or change it, I do try to mimic the soil. So right now this plant is in, looks like regular potting mix with a lot of perlite in it. So I would say about a good 50% perlite, and the rest is just your regular potting soil from what I can feel. I don't really see any orchid bark in here, but of course you could do that if you decided to change your planting medium just to add extra aeration. But in this case, when I purchased the plant, it seemed to be doing fine. I didn't see any serious declines where it had to make me up or change the actual soil. So I would stick with the soil that I actually brought this plant in. Now, in regards to watering, you guys, this is where this beautiful specimen right here, it gets a little tricky, and this is where I also say, okay, this may not particularly be a plant for a new plant parent. The watering, you kind of have to figure out a little bit on its own. The one thing that I do know from my experience is this plant does not like to be completely dried out. It does like to stay moist but not wet. And when I talk about moist and not wet, if you've been watching my channel for some time, usually when I am talking about those plants that prefer to be moist and not wet, I always recommend to water this plant when at least 1 inch of the soil is dry. Well, when it comes to the emerald gem, this beautiful plant right here, that's not the case. It wants to be moist, but you want to let it dry out a little bit longer than the traditional time of the 1 inch. So personally for me, I recommend at least 50% to maybe 75% of the soil will actually have to be dry, and then you give the plant a good drink. Now, what I did know, this plant is a thirsty plant, so it does communicate with you when it's it will droop down severely, you guys. It will droop down. It's not going to wilt. It shouldn't look wilted. If it started looking wilted, then you have really surpassed the time frame of when to water it. But it does communicate with you because the leaves will, you know, drop down a bit to give you an indication that it needs a good drink. Now, in the growing seasons, our summer months, I found myself to be watering this plant a couple of times within a week. So maybe twice, maybe sometimes even 3 times within a 7 to 10 day window. Now, we're about to enter the actual dormant period for those that actually experience winter, which I happen to experience winter where I'm at. I live in Maryland, so we do have winter time, and I will pull back on the watering. In this case, it probably would be like 1 time within a 7 to 10 day window. Now, you guys, honestly, I don't like really giving you like windows of time. I don't stick to any type of watering schedule because you really can't do that. Plants really have to tell you when they need when they need water. And once you get used to what your plants is asking for in the time period, then you cater according to that. Also, you want to keep in mind, full disclosure, you guys, the tips that I give here is solely under conditions that I may have in my home, in my sunroom, the lighting condition that it's getting, the type of energy that's being used, how much sun is getting. So there's a lot of different factors that do come into play. And I encourage you, if you have this plant or you're interested in getting this beautiful specimen, that you pretty much kind of play around with it and see what area in your home where it works best, and make a decision as far as your watering style. You want to keep in mind your watering style as well. Now, as far as the light, you guys, this plant does love bright indirect light. It would not be able to handle any direct light because it would burn the leaves. Now, I'm kind of on the fence a little bit with the other varieties, such as the Selby. Now, the Homalomema Selby, even though I'm not really talking about it, I want to do it in a comparison. The leaves on the Emerald Gem is a little slightly thicker. It probably would remind me of maybe like a philodendron leaf. But the Selby is a thicker leaf where it really feels thicker, leathery-like. Personally, if you have that particular variety, I would probably say that plant could probably handle a little bit more intensity of the light than this one could. So the Selby could actually take maybe an hour or two of dappled direct light. But if you notice that the leaves are starting to crisp up, then you want to turn it away. But I think it can handle it. This leaf is a little bit thinner, and I know for a fact that if it was under direct light, it would burn for sure. Now let's talk real quick, you guys, about the temperature. This is a tropical plant. Keep in mind, as I've talked about earlier in the video, and it prefers temperature between 65% and 85% range. 65% I would say hopefully is like normal household temperatures. If it's comfortable for you, then hopefully it should be comfortable for this plant. Now, humidity. This plant will do fine, you guys. Can do fine in your average humidity in your home. I say in a range of maybe like 50% humidity in your home. But this plant will do even better if you have a little boost of humidity somewhere. So when I first brought this plant, I actually had it sitting on my dining room table because I thought it was beautiful. But it wasn't that it was declining, but I did notice a drastic change. And I decided, okay, I need to probably take it out of there and bring it in my sunroom. Now, you guys, as I mentioned before, I don't have a humidifier actually in my home. And the average humidity temp, according to my thermometer that I have in there, range between 50 and 51% on any given day. But here inside my sunroom, I do have a humidifier, and I do leave it. Now, I've kind of boosted it up a little bit since the weather is slightly changing. I usually have it at 45, but now I've changed it and boosted it up a little bit to 50. But I've noticed that since I brought this plant in this room, and it's been in here throughout at least half of the growing season so far, and I saw that I haven't had any changes in it, anything. It acclimated very well. So the experiences that I was having inside my home magically stopped, as far as like the yellowing leaves, magically stopped when I brought it in here. So I probably will leave it in here because I really think it's vibing with the environment that I have going in here. So like I said, you may want to play around with that. Now, toxicity. Let's talk about it. Is this plant toxic? Yes, it is, you guys, if it's ingested. So you want to keep this plant in mind and be mindful of your furry babies as well as your little ones when you have this plant around. Now, also too, you guys, this plant is actually sensitive. It may cause skin irritation. So I haven't had that experience, and I've been pretty much handling this plant with my hands. But I probably would put on a pair of gloves, you guys, if I decided had to cut a stem or two off the plant. But if you have sensitive skin, if you do have this plant, I recommend probably, or you decide to buy the plant, just use some gloves when you're handling this plant, and that way you won't have any problems, hopefully. Now, repotting. Let's talk about that. This plant, you guys, love to be root bound and slightly root bound. So traditionally, we would say with most of our house plants, you don't repot them until maybe like every 2 years. But I think for this one, because it does like to be root bound, it could probably take being repotted every 3 years. I don't see me actually repotting this anytime soon. The only time you may want to step outside of that theory is if you actually are seeing that where the pot has been overgrown with the roots is coming up at the top, bottom, then at that point you do know you need to actually do a repot. It's just absorbed all of the nutrients that it's possibly going to be able to obtain from the soil that's in the pot, and it needs fresh soil in order to continue to thrive. Now, let's talk about propagating. Propagating this beautiful plant, you guys. This plant has, the root system has rhizomes. And I'm assuming like rhizomes like, I would say maybe like your snake plant if I had to do a form of a comparison. But you would actually do cuttings at the rhizome in this plant, and you can also do propagating or separating. But I would recommend you to separate. If you're going to separate, propagate by separation, do it with a very mature, well-established plant. I think if you do it with a juvenile form, it's a possibility that you can actually shock your plant. Now, troubleshooting. Let's talk a little bit about troubleshooting this beautiful plant, you guys. If you've experienced any yellowing leaves, let's say dying leaves at a rapid, alarming rate, there's 3 things that could be going on with this plant, you guys, that you need to take in consideration. One is the plant could be too wet, so for a long period of time. So you could actually be watering your plant, but let's say the plant is not absorbing its energy like it should, then you may want to pull back on your watering or move it to a brighter space where it can start using up more energy and absorbing that water. Now, it could also be from the plant is too cold. So keep in mind, you guys, this is a tropical plant, a very beautiful plant, I might add. A tropical plant that loves warmth. So you want to check where you have your plants. Check to make sure it's not near any drafts, possible an area where doors and windows are being constantly open and closed. It can also be an indicator of that. Now, the third thing is that the plant could just be staying a little bit too dry. And that's where you really got to be real mindful of your watering regimen when it comes to this plant. Like I said, you guys, you don't want it to completely dry out, but you do want it to be a little bit dry. Give it a nice drink, and you want to stay, and you want, once you establish a schedule for this beautiful plant baby, then you will see it thrive and become a beautiful specimen. I'm really proud that I have this plant in my collection, and I encourage you intermediate or a little bit more experienced plant parents to give this plant a try. Look at the foliage, you guys. I just love that green, and I can truly understand why it's called the emerald gem. This thing is heavy, by the way, so that's why I've been sitting it down a little bit. I apologize if I haven't been able to give you guys the full beauty of this plant, but I just love the leaves. It's so beautiful. It looks so full, and actually in this pot, if I have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plants in here, and it's beautiful. You gotta admit, you guys, it's a very beautiful plant. It just adds even more beauty to your sea of green in your collection. So that pretty much wraps this video up, you guys. I hope you really did enjoy it. I had fun making this video, you guys, and sharing the tips. And I thought that the peduncle situation was a very interesting fun fact. I hope you learned something from the video. At least that's my goal. Or if you did already know this information, maybe you were entertained a little bit. I'm hoping that I did provide you with some form of entertainment. But comment below, you guys. Let me know if you have any of the varieties of the Homalomema species. Particularly if anybody has that the purple sword. If you could share that with us, or perhaps let me know the care tips on that. I would be very interested in that. But if you also have any care tips outside of what I mentioned, or just share with me in general what you've done in your environment, what works well for you regarding these species in your environment. Like I said, let's always start a conversation. I enjoy talking to you guys, and I love the tips that you guys leave me. you know, knowledge is key, and that's the reason why I created this particular series of Curiosity Grew the Plant, because of course the more that we know, the more that we grow. So as always, guys, if you love foliage as much as I do and you love listening to planting things, then definitely hit that subscribe button. Give me a big thumbs up, please. It gets that, help me get that channel out there so that more people can view it. You can give me a thumbs down too if you didn't really like the video. I appreciate all opinions, regardless if it's something positive or negative. Enjoy your day wherever you are in the world, you guys, and until next time, much love. And one last look at this beautiful thing, because she is a beaut. Very beautiful. And one last thing, you guys, why do we always say she? Why aren't plants usually ever a he? I don't know. Wondering minds may want to know, but yeah. But see y'all later. Have a good day.